People, Deluded, I'm back again. I'm just before we got into it, I'm sure you just saw the video, so please check out the sponsors, the links in the bio. Make sure you're using the code Deluded. Oh, we're having a bit of a cock block there. Apologies, people. I've got the tab up as well. That's a atrocious start, and I really should introduce Andrew properly, but we're off to a good start, aren't we? Andrew, how are you doing? I've wanted to get this done for a while, man.
I'm all right, man. How are you?
I'm good. As we was talking about off air, until tomorrow, you know, my mood is quite mellow, really. It hasn't registered that we're playing. I've been enjoying the Champions League and whatnot, man.
It's a huge game for us, isn't it? It really is just a massive occasion. I think with everything that's going on at the moment, there's a bit of I think we've kind of lost sight of the fact that we've got a European semi-final tomorrow, and we could get to the final of the Europa League. And I know Europa League is not the competition everyone wants to be in, but it's a competition we are in. And look, we made a mess of the first leg, but it's only a goal in it. So I think with everything that's going on off the pitch and the fact that fans can't be there properly, we haven't necessarily got the same kind of build up to this game as you normally would.
It's losing that sort of edge. I feel that. And I feel that's been the case of many a game this season. You just touched on it. And obviously, I haven't spoken to you on here before. What did you make of the first leg? How did it go for you?
I think it was a missed opportunity, really, because you look at what happened with the red card with Dani Ceballos. And I really feared the worst when we went down to 10 men. And we probably played our best football after he went off, which isn't to be overly critical of him or anything like that. I think the manager really had to take responsibility for the red card, doesn't he? He should have made a change. But when you look at what we did after that red card and you think, well, if it had been 11 versus 11, if we could have brought Aubameyang on a bit earlier on, maybe we could have, got another away goal. So it is a bit of a missed opportunity. In the context of the game, though, I was delighted and relieved to get out with something, with the away goal. Yeah, because it would have been really hard at 2-0. It could have been worse. It could have been 3-0. So to come away in the circumstances with the away goal gives us really something to hang on to tomorrow night. I think we can be happy about that, but maybe critical of how the game was managed in the first place.
Yeah, you said that you touched on something there, and I'd like to press you on a bit of it as well. It's the age-old question for Arsenal fans. Why do we have to go 1-0 down after 5 minutes or 2 down after half an hour or get a red card before we start seeing a reaction and looking like we're trying to win a game and get to the final of Europa League?
If I had the answer to that question, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. I'd be outside the training ground handing it to Mikel Arteta and what have you. I don't know. Look, it's just one of those things. We seem to make life so difficult for ourselves, don't we? In every occasion, it's like we find these new and inventive ways of making life as tough as possible for ourselves. So fingers crossed, if we get through tomorrow night, we can look back on this semi-final and put it down as another example of one of those times when Arsenal made life much more difficult for themselves than they should have. But I don't know. I mean, I guess some of it is just maybe it's nerves. I don't know. Look, we didn't manage that game particularly well last week, 100%. And I'm not sure. I think what happened was Villarreal, they probably saw that there was a weakness there in midfield because there's Juan Foyth just running through our midfield at will, time and time. Yeah, he did it so much he wrecked himself. So, it seemed to be a bit of a plan because he must have known if Xhaka was at left back, Ceballos is in there. Emery knows Ceballos pretty well, because he was at the club when Emery was as well. He'll know he's not the most mobile, not the quickest. If you get him running towards his own goal, you're going to overtake him. So you're in trouble. So I think, to be fair to Unai Emery, he did a good job of predicting what Mikel Arteta was going to do and exploiting some of the weaknesses in the team setup.
Facts and more facts. When you look at the set piece, the slow start, it was almost a difference between an experienced manager and a kind of inexperienced manager. Yeah. Do you think Arteta overcomplicated things in that first leg? Because we look at the false nine. I'm not necessarily against it in principle. It's just when he tried to do it and who he tried to do it with. Like our players, you can't write a novel if you can't, read and write. I think we need to go back to primary school with a lot of the things we do.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like he does make life a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. And I think, even in the context of that game, surely we could have, moved Emile Smith-Rowe to the left for a little while and put Pepe in that false nine position.
Someone that's played there, yeah.
Yeah, it would have been really interesting to see how that went. But he seemed to stick to what he had. I think there's an element of trying to do something different. Like, people were often critical of Arsene Wenger when when he didn't do anything, when he didn't try anything tactically, when he didn't, when he wasn't innovative or anything like that. And I think that's who Arteta is. He does try things. He's confident enough in his players and in himself to try things. It's just that when it doesn't work, I feel sometimes he's a little bit too slow to try to correct them, whether it's with a change or with a little bit of a reshuffle on the pitch.
That's something I was going to press you on as well, and you've jumped into it. It's like when I look at Arteta, I get the vibe that if he knows he's playing a team a week before, he can plan, he can do the analytical stuff, he can really plan. But it's like a boxing match. You can study a fighter, but when you get into that boxing match and they do something a bit different, you need to change your plan. And that feels like a lot of us fans, we all think we know everything. We all think we got the answers, but it's like that Ceballos thing just told me everybody can see something apart from Arteta. And I do feel sometimes when you're the man in it, you can't always see it. So what do you make of that? Because I feel he's not really learning from his mistakes. It's not really an inexperience problem. It's just he's literally not learning from his mistakes game to game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I spoke about this on the podcast with James this week or last week, where we looked at that incident and thought, like, does he view things differently from us? Because every single Arsenal fan in the world was looking at that Ceballos situation last week and going, just be careful.
Half-time, get him off.
Half-time, or even after he made that foul really early in the second half, get him off. But he clearly trusts the players, or trusts their discipline, or trusts his own judgment to a fault, I guess you would say. I think if you make the boxing analogy, there are also ringmen, aren't there? There's guys there alongside the coach or the trainer who can say, listen, this is not going the way we want it to go. It's time to do something a little bit different. So, I don't know for sure if one of his coaches, whether it was Steve Round or Albert Stuyvenberg, said to him, look, we got to get Ceballos off. Maybe they did, and maybe Arteta ignored them, but maybe that's a factor too, is that some of the people around him need to be a bit more assertive when it comes to decisions like that, because, ultimately we saw what happened. Ceballos got sent off, and we put ourselves in an even more difficult position.
Facts and more facts, and I can't expand on that. What have you made of Ceballos anyways throughout his 2 years at Arsenal? Because for me, he's had little flutters of form. He's clearly a very good technical footballer, but I thought to have the fact that many fans won't cry that the fact that a Real Madrid player isn't going to stay here, it kind of tells for me to tell as to how his time here has gone.
I think the fact that he hasn't been a Real Madrid player for 2 years tells you, a lot about what they think of him.
Facts.
Right? I think he's, I often say this, I think he'd be a great five-a-side player. I'd love to play five-a-side with him. I just don't want him on a big pitch in big spaces.
That's a great one.
I think technically he's got some skills. He's got, when his eye is in, he can make some good passes, but it's just been way too inconsistent, hasn't it? Do you remember, was it like really on in the Unai Emery or his second season? I think it was Ceballos' first season. It was maybe the second game of the season. He played against Burnley, and he was brilliant.
And we all loved him from there. Yeah.
It was a warm, sunny day. He ran around. He was like celebrating when he made an assist. And, that I think maybe set expectations a little bit too high for what we were going to get from Dani Ceballos. I think I understood why he was brought back. Because it was easy to do, and he had been reasonable in the Project Restart and played a part in winning the FA Cup. In the final, he's strong into the season, so I could see why we brought him back. I was expecting more, though. I was expecting more this season. He hasn't scored a goal. He's only made a couple of assists. So, I think overall he's been a bit disappointing, to be honest. And I don't see any real reason why we would try and bring him back. I mean, he said himself, didn't he? He wants to go back to Spain, and that's fine. And, it's been okay, but nothing much more than that.
What do you make of those comments? Because when, again, many fans could get aggrieved by that. When you have the eve of a semi-final and a player is talking about, I'd rather it be in Spain than in the Premier League. I know Leno's caught a lot of heat for similar comments. Personally, I don't mind it because I think players can be professional and do a job. Obviously, the timing isn't great. So where do you stand on that?
I'm with you on that one. I think players can say things, but when they go out in the pitch, they want to win. They want to do their best for their team, for their club, for their teammates. I don't think Dani Ceballos talked about wanting to go back to Spain and then said, I don't care about Arsenal. I don't care how I play. I don't think that's how it works.
100%.
If we win the game against Villarreal, nobody pays the slightest bit of attention to anything Dani Ceballos said. And it's like, even today, Mikel Arteta was asked about playing the false nine, and he said, yeah, there's a lot of talk, but it's all down to result. If you win the game with a false nine, you're a managerial genius for doing something different. If you don't, it's the big problem. Problems are more complicated, more complex than that, as we know. So
Facts.
I don't really read too much into it. I think sometimes a player can say the wrong thing at the wrong time, for sure, no question, but I don't really see too much wrong in what Ceballos said. I think when we lose, we look for everything that can be cathartic for us to give out about, so it's the manager, it's the tactics, it's the players, it's this guy said this, it's this guy said that. And ultimately, it's really down to what happens on the pitch. And some of those things are such fine margins that I don't get too stressed about it these days, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up perfectly. Like you said, you're a genius. If it works, rightly so, you should face question marks. What have you made of Arteta this season? Because I don't know about many people, but I'm on the fence. If he was to leave, I wouldn't necessarily be upset. I don't think he deserves to be hounded out. I think there's something in there, but when I really scrutinize my opinion, I think there's a lot of blind optimism from myself. And I think there are reasons to be happy, but I don't think there's a lot of tangible reasons I can sit here on my YouTube channel and to say anything. So what do you make of Arteta this season?
When you look at the way we've played in the Premier League and you look at how many games we've lost, under normal circumstances, I don't think any manager could complain if at the end of the season there was a parting of the ways. If the club came and said, that's not good enough, if Arsenal have finished 10th. He still has the salvation of the Europa League, which I think is a big thing. If he can win us a European trophy, it's a big if, of course, but it's still possible.
Facts.
That would be massive. First person to do that since, George Graham.
Facts.
So, that is a hell of an achievement if he can do it. There's the big if. I feel like as a club, we've needed somebody to come in and recognize that a lot of things are wrong. And we can see a lot of things are wrong, from top to bottom, and have been wrong for a long time. And we've needed somebody to come in and put things right and acknowledge that these things are wrong. And I think that's sort of where my little bit of hope with Arteta still lies, in that he has recognized and acknowledged that, the standards haven't been good enough. The culture hasn't been good enough.
We're fractured.
The important thing for him is the football hasn't been good enough this season. That is a big problem for him. There are reasons which are, you could look to, and you can talk about COVID, but everybody's had to deal with COVID.
Facts.
Everybody's had to deal with no preseason.
Facts.
What I would say, though, is no club that I can think of anyway has had to deal with the departure of a legacy manager like Arsene Wenger, who'd been there for so many years and had so much power, who then appointed another manager or a head coach who didn't really work out, for basically the entire executive structure to fall apart as well in that same period, with Gazidis going, Mislintat going, Sanyehi going, having to restructure everything at executive level and all that kind of stuff as well. That's where I think the situation at Arsenal is a little bit unique and might give Mikel Arteta the wiggle room for the poor performances this season and the poor results that we've had. So, like you, I wonder if there is some blind optimism, that I'm just really hoping he can be the guy that we wanted him to be when he arrived. It's hard to make that case when you see what happens on the pitch, but I tell you what I don't get is the sense that the players, I don't think the players doubt him. I don't get that. You can see sometimes from the performances when players just aren't doing it, and they aren't doing it for a particular manager, and they aren't doing it in games, and you don't see the focus. I don't get that sense from the players, and that is another thing that will provide him with a bit of a safety net as well.
Facts, like you said there. I think, sometimes that you look for the players, and I'm very wary of our players because I think I've seen a theme now where when Emre came, he tells us everything we need to do, and then essentially they down tools. Haven't quite got there under Arteta, but we know a lot of these players need to go. I do defo agree with you. What do you think of his handling of players in the squad? Because sometimes certain players allegedly haven't been allowed to play when they've done well. Certain players have retained their spots. You know, he's finally understood that Willian probably shouldn't be in my starting lineup week in, week out if I want to win games.
Well, look, I mean, Willian, I think he stopped being a regular in the team before Christmas. So it took him a bit longer than it should have to come to that conclusion, but he still came to that conclusion.
Better late than never, eh?
Yeah, exactly. I think, you think about some of the young players in particular, right? So you think about Martinelli, and he's somebody who we've wanted to see in the team much more than we have this season. And I get that because he's really exciting and he's fun to watch. And we don't have too many players who are like really fun just
exciting
to watch.
And whatnot. Yeah.
I do think as well that sometimes the people jump to conclusions like he's not using Martinelli, therefore he hates Martinelli, doesn't like him, and never wants to play him. I don't get
facts.
Don't get that. I think sometimes we look at something and then jump to the worst possible conclusion. I think when you're an inexperienced manager, perhaps you default a little bit to experience in your team to offset that a little bit, because as a player, and Arteta's only a few years after retirement, I think he would project his own self as a player onto some of these guys, right? So he's been there, he's done that, he's played all the games, he's won the trophies. If we're talking about someone like Willian, right? He sort of has this inherent trust in their experience to be able to lift them out of situations which are difficult. But what's been interesting is the fact that it's the young players who have helped turn things around.
Carrying him. Yeah.
Smith Rowe came back into the team, Saka from the right-hand side, Martinelli came back into the team for that Chelsea game. Like, our improvement and the best thing about Arsenal this season has been the young players. Facts. It really has. So I think he has to learn to trust them a little bit more, but I also understand why managers are a bit cautious with young players too, that they don't want to throw them in at the deep end. They don't want them to be scarred by bad results or bad performances, or for them to become targets of hate and anger and all that kind of stuff as well. So there is a balance to be found. I mean, I think there's a really great example, isn't there, at Man City, where their fans were going crazy week after week after week about why aren't they playing Phil Foden? Why aren't they playing Phil Foden?
Facts.
We want to see him. And I don't know the exact reason why they weren't playing Phil Foden, but was it because they didn't think he was a good player? I don't think so. Was it because they couldn't see his talent? No way.
Needed time.
You just look at that kid and he's amazing to watch. He's a brilliant player, no question about it. But what they did was they held him back. They held him back until they felt he was ready to play week in, week out. And now look at what he's doing.
He's flying.
So there is a time to introduce players. And I think it's also a little bit to do with the balance of the team. So Phil Foden is coming into a team with De Bruyne and Mahrez and Jesus and Bernardo Silva and Gundogan, where I'm not going to say, and Sterling, he's not the only young player, but he's the golden child of Man City, if you like. Whereas we've got Martinelli, we've got Saka, we've got Smith Rowe, who are all really, really, in the grand scheme of things, quite inexperienced. So it's much more difficult to play three of those guys without having those experienced players around them, like Foden has, which is part of why he's developed the way he has, So I think it's a learning curve for Arteta, like most things. It's a learning curve for him, how he deals with players, how he deals with situations, how he deals with individuals. And if he's here next season, let's hope that's something that he can improve on.
You summed it up perfectly there in that, you can't, that's why I think fans and everyone needs to have a bit of balance. Like, I'm a big fan of Martinelli, but when I'm watching him, he has some exciting moments. There are some moments I can see, you need to improve there. You're a bit raw there. My problem has been with Arteta is that I can't really read him. I don't really know who you like, because sometimes somebody's in the squad week in, week out, and there'll be a top 6 game and then they're out. Personally, I share your opinion. You know, you've got to give the young players a proper environment. But in terms of building a new mentality, I just by a law of averages, you know, some of these players have failed several managers. If you're going to install a new mentality, you do it with the young players. And sometimes it's like he's trying to do the experience thing, then the young thing, and there's not really a clear thing. And it's like you said, we're having an over reliance. You know, Saka is still a young, inexperienced player, as you put perfectly, but him without him in the team, we're looking at the team a bit sideways. Smith Rowe, I don't want to say it was accidental, but it took a while for him to get his opportunity. Now he's got it and he's flying. So it's like, as much as I credit Arteta for that, it's like, did you really want to do it, or did it happen? You know, Pepe's not too much older than them. I know he's 25, but we've taken a while to see what we wanted from Pepe. On one hand, if that's what the manager's doing for reaction, I get it. But on the other hand, I don't see clarity. And, you know, fans are always going to do that. They're crying out for Balogun. I am as well. But if Balogun plays 10 games, he has a bit of a wobble. We both know that where fans are going to take that one. So I do think they need to give him time. What do you make of our young centre-half, Gabriel? Because I think he's our best centre-half, but he's one of those players. I'm looking at Arteta now, is that he clearly needs a lot of work. He's clearly raw. He's clearly prone to moments of madness. I need to see how you're going to improve them. Not so much this season because they're thriving in and amongst our madness, but when Saliba comes, when Gabriel comes, how are you going to take them to the next level? How are we going to make Martinelli that inside forward or striker? That's the next step for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the future of the team isn't David Luiz, obviously. I don't think Pablo Mari is anything better than... you know, he's a reasonable backup. And I also think that about Rob Holding. I think he's a good backup centre half, but not somebody who should be playing week in, week out for a team which has the kind of stated ambitions of Arsenal. So you're looking for the future. I mean, that is the thing. He's going to have to produce some individual improvement in these players. You know,
Sorry to cut you off, but can he? Just to carry on what you're saying, do you think he can? Just to play devil's advocate.
Well, I don't know why he and his coaching staff wouldn't be able to. I think part of the issue for me when I think about it is the like, how many times have we played the same back four this season?
You tell me. Not too many. You know, we can't complain that there's no fluidity.
Yeah, so we've got injuries and we've had the team has been reshuffled because, you know, we've got one left back. I mean, Granit Xhaka left back, like, God bless him. He's really trying his best, and I think he's done pretty well there. You know, I think this is a guy, whatever you think of Granit Xhaka, is he'll give you 100%. And if the manager says, you know, play in goal, he'll play in goal. He'll do it. And I think he's done pretty well at left back, you know, within the scope of the role that he's being asked to play. But it means you have to reshuffle a lot of other things in the team as well. So you have 100%. To like get that Ceballos guy in there. So I was encouraged by what we did post Christmas. You know, when we found that little bit of structure with Odegaard, Smith Rowe,
you look like we're turning the corner
behind a striker, and you've got Thomas Partey in the team. So, you know, I think we're missing a key man in midfield when Jack is at left back. We don't have the left back we need when Jack is at left back. We don't have a proper right back. You know, I mean, like, I like Hector, but it's hard not to think that, you know, the time has come. Callum Chambers, great game against West Ham, but like, if you were to say to somebody 3 years ago that Callum Chambers would be your first choice right back,
they'll laugh at you.
Well, how's this team improving? You know, where are you going with these players? 100%. Cedric, like, he's now basically third choice right back and third choice left back, which tells you a lot about that signing. So there have been all kinds of issues for him to deal with. Can he improve guys on an individual basis? I hope so. But he needs to find a structure with which to do that first, because I think, you know, not to say he should be predictable or anything like that, but I feel like for the most part, a team needs like a base.
You need a framework and freedom within.
Framework is the right way of putting it. Yeah. Yeah,
that's exactly what I believe, because that's what I want to see. That, you know, I think it is. I like how he likes to flip things up at the start of the season. Well, I was praising him for, he is someone, there wasn't no emotion to it. Like, he could love a player. Even Xhaka was dropped. If he doesn't feel Xhaka is the right guy, he would take him out. But like you said, the flip side and the illogical balance of that is you don't build up relationships. You know, centre halves, they don't understand how to play with each other. You know, he wants to build out from the back and play out from the back. You can't do that, excluding injuries, with a stable back five. And then when I look at it, it, I can somewhat understand when he doesn't go with Cedric there because it's going to cripple him. But many people will say, you know, you put Xhaka there, as you've perfectly put, you lose a lot in midfield. So how are you mitigating against that? Like you said, we all know Xhaka is a decent player. He's better than people give him credit for. He's not quite the answer. But when you look at him, you know he struggles a bit defensively and he's immobile. So when I go back to the Villarreal game and I see you've put Marie there, centre halves have to be pulled out wide to help their fullbacks, and you ain't got a midfielder, you've got Ceballos. So you can see how if this goes tits up, there's a problem. Also, you look at our pressing. You know, that first goal for me comes as a result of the pressing, because if you want to do the false nine thing, then surely you have to make sure they're pressing. Or as you know, Andrew, I'm sure there's many ways of doing a false nine. We haven't got someone that can play as a false nine. So why didn't we just make it no striker and we've got midfielders in a sense? I don't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to go back to what you were saying about the centre half thing, where he was, you know, when you have Xhaka at left back and maybe your left back needs a bit of cover or needs somebody with a bit of speed or what have you, maybe Gabriel is the best guy for that. And I think what he did was he picked Holding and Marie, who've been quite good together generally this season. Maybe the partnership he should have been looking for was Gabriel and Xhaka, you know, to give you that bit more structure on that
exactly.
down that left-hand side of your defense. Look, he has ideas. He's got very clear ideas of what he wants to do and how he wants to play. And I'm curious to see what he's going to do tomorrow, because, you know, we're going to have to score. And I feel like we're going to have to score at least 2 tomorrow to go through. I know like 1-0 gets us through, but I think it was
long gone of those days, man.
It's the end of January since we kept a clean sheet at home. So, you know, it's hard to, you can't bank on that. This is no 1-0 to the Arsenal team.
Them days are gone.
They're way gone, you know. So I think we're going to have to structure the team in such a way that we maximize our attacking threat. To make life difficult for Villarreal, that even if they score a goal, we can feel confident about getting a couple ourselves.
Who do you go with?
Who would I go with?
Yeah, what would your 11 be? Because I know there's a lot of talk. Should people even say Matt Ryan or Leno? Do we try Callum Chambers and Gabriel right back? There's 1,000 options. Whether any of them are actually good enough is another question. But there's many questions.
I think it'll be Leno. I would play Bellerin at right back. I'd play Chambers at centre half. Gabriel. This is difficult because I wonder if Tierney is going to be available. You know, I wonder if he might be available because he's back in training. Maybe people won't like this, but if he's not, I would play Saka at left back.
Thank you. That's me as well. Just do a job for us.
Yeah, he can do it. He can do what Tierney does, basically. He can do what Tierney does. He overlaps, and I know he gives us a load of attacking threat on the right-hand side, but he also gives you a load of attacking threat on the left-hand side, where he got like 10, 11 assists in his first full season. So let's not forget that. It doesn't mean if you play Saka instead of Xhaka at left back, he's going to play it the same way, because with all due respect to Xhaka, Saka can get forward and get back. And he can get forward and get back. And Xhaka, if he goes up and down the touchline a few times,
one or the other.
Yeah, it's, you know, that's not what you want him to do. So that's what I would do if Tierney wasn't available. I'd play Saka there, Xhaka and Partey in midfield, Odegaard, Pepe on the right. I think Smith Rowe on the left and Aubameyang up front. And I know people are going to go crazy about Martinelli, but we need something on the bench as well. We need something that if the game isn't going our way, we can bring on to actively change the game.
Facts.
You know, and with all due respect to Lacazette and to Eddie Nketiah, they're guys who can get you goals in a certain structure, but they're not the kind of guys who are going to come on and do anything in the final 20 minutes that the Villarreal defense are going to be scared of. Whereas if you see Martinelli come on,
energy,
pumped up, fast, full of energy,
youthful naivety as well.
Like he's looking at you and he's just saying, I'm going to run you. I'm going to run
it's
you.
a long day at the office now.
And exactly. The last 20 minutes are going to feel hard on your legs. So that's what I would do. That's what I would do. As you know, as much as I love watching Martinelli, I think in this game, if we're looking at the whole 90 minutes and what we might need, I think I'd keep him on the bench just to give us that little bit of something extra.
If David Luiz is fit, do you start him?
I don't know how David Luiz can be fit. I don't know how a guy can go off with a hamstring injury on Sunday and play a game on Thursday. I don't know how you can risk that. I don't. Like, you know, if you're already on the brink of taking a gamble with Kieran Tierney, I don't think you can put two of your back four in and take that much of a risk. So I'd be really surprised if Luiz was fit. I just don't get how he could go off with a hamstring and be ready.
And I agree with that as well, because for me, it's like, that's one problem I've had with Arteta. It's like, sometimes I think you need to save players for themselves. Tierney's been through it. I believe Thomas Partey, when you look at the Spurs game, went through it. David Luiz, you know, it's all good and dandy saying they're back fit, but these players, they're always going to want to play. They do care. And again, I'm no medical man. Arteta isn't either. And if they're passing them as fit, then there's fair play. But sometimes I believe in losing battles to win wars, and it's like we're setting people up for failure. So I do agree with that. You know, if we throw in the Tierneys and these sort of players, we're risking injuries. I think that's something Arteta can improve in. I agree with you with not starting Martinelli, but my lineup would probably be, assuming there's no David Luiz, I would go with Gabriel in midfield. Midfield, definitely not. Gabriel at centre half. I'll probably go with Holding, because although I'm with you on the Chambers thing, it's like, I don't really want to try anything new in this game. And it's like, they might not be perfect. They're hit and miss, but they kind of understand each other. Right back's where I have a problem, because a part of me wants it to go to Chambers because he's done all right. A part of me says, you know what, just go with Cedric. Bellerin's probably the most sort of natural, but we know what we're getting with him. So I'll probably give it Cedric. Left back, we both agree I'm going with Saka, just so Xhaka can play in midfield. And I think when you've got Saka bombing forward, Xhaka pulls out to that left back sort of role anyways. Exactly. Then you have Martinelli or someone in front or whatever. Personally, I'd probably do something that people would hate. You know, I'd probably pull Aubameyang out wide. I'd probably go Lacazette through the middle, and I'd probably go with Pepe on the right, purely because Lacazette's going to press. Just give me an hour. Just give me an hour or so of just that pressing, because I do think if Lacazette presses, that first goal doesn't happen. Aubameyang shoehorned into the side, and then, like you said, you've got Martinelli on the bench, and the last thing you want to do is absolutely defend against them. But for me, the thing that scares me is, regardless of the lineup, is concentration, and that's something I can't blame Arteta on. And I think that's where many fans, you can't just sit there and blame the players or Arteta. Once they cross that chalk, the players need to concentrate. You know, I can blame Arteta for the false nine as much as I want, but it's on the players for conceding in 5 minutes. You know, we struggle at set pieces. I guess that's on Arteta's coaching, but they've switched off. I don't understand it, and they can't. Where do you think we go from here if we do go out? Because no European football, there's obviously a financial fallout in that regards. I don't know if it affects transfers. Where do you think we go from there?
Well, you know, I think it's clear that if we were to win the Europa League, what we can do in the transfer market would be substantially different from what we can do if 100%. We go out of the Europa League, right? With no European football whatsoever. You know, we win the Europa League, we're in the Champions League, which is kind of scary when you consider some of the teams that are in it and some of the quality of some of the football that we've seen. Where do we go? I suppose it puts the onus on maybe some owner investment, as ludicrous as that might sound.
That's something I want to ask you on as well.
Yeah. I think as well, you know, if it's a case that going out of the Europa League doesn't mean Arteta loses his job, I think it places a heavy burden on him for next season to really produce in the Premier League from the start, because we won't have the distraction of qualifying games for Europe. We won't have the distraction of midweek football. He will have basically a week between every game.
Maybe even 10 days sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. To work with these players and to drill them tactically and to concentrate fully 100% on the Premier League. So if it's a case we go out of Europe and he keeps his job, I think he's got until about December.
I agree.
To stay in it. And if we're not doing pretty well in the Premier League, it's impossible to defend that, you know, because
100%.
Nobody could say he wouldn't have been given the right kind of chance, you know? So there'd be a lot of people who would say that if we go out of Europe after losing 12, 13 games in the Premier League, that should be it anyway. I know we talked about this a little bit earlier. But But like, that's not our call to make as fans. That's going to be
100%.
something that the owners make. And maybe this sort of recent pressure on the ownership might prompt them into a decision in the summer, because they have to show that they're active or they care. They could do that in a couple of ways. One, they could really back Arteta with money. If they believe in him, if they still believe in him, they could back him with money. If they're unsure, if they have doubts, do they give a manager they have such doubts over
significant
funds to invest in players that a new manager might not want? You know what I mean? So it is going to be quite interesting to see what happens. My gut feeling is they'll stick with him.
That sets me up perfectly. Sorry for cutting you off. That sets me up perfectly for what I'm going to ask you, because I know you're pressed for time. You mentioned indirectly of them, investing in him and whatnot. And when I look at it, we could say, without talking about why it's different, Emre was sacked for significantly less. I don't feel Emre got the sort of backing we hear from the club that Arteta has. It looks like they're doubling down on Arteta. It looks like they're really betting on him. He's gone from a head coach to a manager. He's arguably involved in many processes beyond being a manager, being a coach, than other people were. So when you look at that and you see the pressure on, one minute it was Dangote, now all the talk is Daniel Ek taking over the club and Spotify. Provided he stays, or somehow Kroenke stays, do you see him waking up and saying, cool, I need to show the fans something, I need to invest significantly? So maybe we could have a summer where it's not just Thomas Partey, it's Thomas Partey and the actual midfielder he needs, and maybe a right back, and all the areas all us fans want. Do you see him at least having a season, a pre-season or a transfer market where we could say, cool, we might need the Kroenkes out, but credit where due, the transfer window's been all right, they've pulled it out?
Look, I mean, I can't say with any certainty that Kroenke is going to give us a whole load of money to spend, because he's never really done that. Even if there 100%. Have been some things of late where, they have restructured the stadium debt. They did help finance the Partey deal. I don't quite know how they did that, but we had to pay 50 million up front, and the club didn't have 50 million euros up front. Wow. So, they made that happen. Now, whether it's, as a loan to the club or what have you, I don't quite know. I think there is some pressure on them now to show that they really are willing to take the club where they keep saying they want to take it. Like they keep saying, we're in this to win the biggest trophies. We're ambitious. We're all these kind of things. And where I would have some, I don't want to say sympathy necessarily with Kroenke or KSE or anything like that, but I think there's a perception that we don't spend money, or that the club haven't spent money.
And we've undermanaged it, really, mismanaged.
We spent a lot of money on Partey, on Pepe, on Gabriel, on William Saliba. We paid 28 million pounds for an 18-year-old centre half who played 10 games of football. That's backing for that manager or that particular administration. 100%. You know what I mean? So one of the things that we need to do as a football club is make better decisions about who we buy, who we sell, when we sell them, if we sell them at all. We can't have situations where we're in January and we're basically paying players to go away. That is not a sign of a well-run club.
Facts.
So the first thing, I think, if Kroenke is going nowhere, there needs to be some acknowledgement that the decisions they've made in terms of who they put in charge of running the club at executive level have not been good enough. And that's maybe where we could make a big improvement. If they want to buy or help finance a couple of really good players, that will help too. It'll help the team. And if it helps performances, the thing about owners is nobody cares about owners if you're winning.
That's the thing. Nobody gives a crap.
We're not winning. And the owners are part of the problem, though. So I'm not saying that that's not an issue. We're not winning, and part of the reason we're not winning is because of the way the club has been run. So I wonder if there might just be something from them this summer. It might be blind optimism, as we were talking about a bit earlier on.
Probably,
I wouldn't bet my house on it. I wouldn't bet your house on it or anyone else's house watching this. I wouldn't do it. But I suppose the one thing that you have to have as a football fan, as cynical as you might be and realistic as you might be, is hope. Because if you don't have any hope, then what's the point? So, look, the other side of that is that we could beat Villarreal tomorrow night, and we could go and beat Man United in the final of the Europa League. and we have this trophy, and we have the Champions League, and we have the Champions League money, and we have that just little bit of extra prestige.
You're exciting me, Andrew, man. This is sounding great.
This is still there for us this season. I know it's been terrible. I know it has. It's been awful. It's been hard. It's been painful at times, but we still have this thing. So let's keep fingers crossed that we can pull it out of the fire. We did it last season. You know, we had to play Man City in the FA Cup semi-final, and nobody gave us a chance. And we beat Man City. We beat Chelsea in the final. And
that's a good point.
You know, we at the business end of the season, under big pressure, we did something. So let's hope we can do it again. Let's hope we need it as a club. We need it. Mikel Arteta needs it. We need it as fans. And it would be amazing. It wouldn't make everything right, what's happened this season. It wouldn't do away with all the concerns that some people have. But at the end of the day, we'd have won a European trophy. And that is not something Arsenal have done enough of in my lifetime, or your lifetime, or the lifetime of many people. So it's still there for us. So let's hope we can do it.
Facts, man. And I know I said last question. I'm going to let you get out of it after this. Sure. It's just I've mentioned it. If Thierry Henry and Patrick Vieira and Dennis Bergkamp and all of these guys come part as this consortium, assuming Daniel Ek did take over the club, would you be happy with that? Are you concerned? I ask you this because listen, every Arsenal fan, I'm sure everyone, we all want Henry back. We all want these legends back involved. But then when I get past my love for the footballers, they're not footballers anymore. They're executives or managers or whatever. What specifically are you going to do? And I look at Henry and Vieira. Could you not be indirectly angling for that managerial role? I don't know. Like, will it be right? What's your opinions on that?
Well, look, Thierry Henry has spoken a lot of times about how he wants to be Arsenal manager, hasn't he?
Fact.
You know, ambitious people will do what it takes to get what they want, and that's not to be critical or anything like it. You know, like I said, I do worry a little bit about the involvement of these guys in something like this, because, you know, I don't know what their roles are going to be. Are they just going to be advisors or ambassadors, or, you know, what influence will they have really? Will they have any responsibility? What if it goes wrong for them? What if it goes wrong for them? And these guys that we all love as players and loved as players, and look, Henry, Bergkamp, and Vieira is like a holy trinity of players for Arsenal.
Any Arsenal fan, yeah.
It's amazing. You know, what if it goes wrong for these guys? Or what if they make decisions that we don't like and it tarnishes their reputation? And, you know, I know that's maybe a worst case scenario kind of outlook, but yeah, I mean, I think Henry has been a manager. Vieira has been a manager. Do these guys want to just come and sit on like a board at Arsenal and sit there and advise the owners and the venture capitalists who actually own the club now, the people who gave Daniel Ek the loans? Or do they want to be involved in football at a more hands-on level? Like, I can't see Patrick Vieira. You know, I know he got fired by Nice, but he was coach of New York City FC, and he has ambitions, I'm sure, to be a manager. I don't think he wants to sit around in the director's box 100%. With a red rosette on for the rest of his career. So I'm not 100% sure what their role would be in a takeover like this. And ultimately, you know, we do have a former captain as manager. We've got a former Invincible as technical director. We've got a former captain as head of the academy. There are former players involved with Arsenal right now.
People there, yeah.
And you could say that's no guarantee of success. Just because someone loves a football club doesn't mean they're the right person to have a job at the football club. You know what I mean?
Facts.
Again, not to be critical. I love Arsenal, but put me in charge and everyone would hate me in 3 months, I'm sure, when I made terrible decisions about who to play. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where our love of the club doesn't qualify us to be to be in charge of the club. But look, let's see how it all plays out. I don't really think that Kroenkes are going to sell to Daniel Ek or anybody else at this point anyway. So we could be talking ourselves in circles. But look, let's see what happens.
You're right on that, man. It's like when I look at Vieira and Henry, I know they love the club, but it's like you came to love this club. And when you come to love something, it only goes so far. And when I look at Thierry Henry and more so Patrick Vieira, because I'm pretty sure some fans have to remember, almost every week he wanted to join Man United or he wanted to go Real Madrid. This isn't me criticizing of that. He's a man that he can love something, but we're all ambitious. We all have self-interest. He wanted to do what he wanted to do. That level of ambition isn't going to leave you in your post-game career. So I can imagine these guys angling and conspiring to a degree. That's why for me, I need to see clarity. Like you said, you're fully right on that, man. But I understand you're pressed for time. Sorry.
Just final point. I mean, Thierry was a player at Monaco, and he went to Monaco to be manager, and he lasted 20 games.
This is it.
You know, so this connection with the club, sometimes it's brilliant. Sometimes it is a great thing. But other times it can maybe blind you to the reality. And maybe there's a little bit going back to what we're talking about with Arteta, that we so want him to be,
to get it right.
We want him to be, and so far it's not quite there. But look, you know, I think the one thing that's positive about the last couple of weeks is that, you know, people can see there is a depth of feeling about how the fans feel about the attempted Europa League thing. Or the Super League thing, that there are still things that can unite us as Arsenal fans, because, you know, we spend a lot of time arguing with ourselves and fretting about things and what have you. But if the owners have recognized that there are certain things that we as fans hold sacrosanct and that are fundamental to our support and continued support of the club, then maybe that might just prompt them into doing things slightly differently.
Facts, man, and it's facts. And before you go, score prediction for tomorrow. I'm going with 2-1 Arsenal over the night.
Oh, 3-1 Arsenal.
A bit more optimism than me. Yeah, to be fair, I think we can both agree we'll concede. If we ain't got hope, we ain't got nothing, man. I can't imagine nobody doesn't know any of your content, Andrew. You're a big guy in this game, but could you plug your stuff and let them know any content that's coming up before you get out of here?
Yeah, just Arseblog on Twitter, and the website is arseblog.com, and you can find everything we do there, from the news to the podcasts and Patreon and everything else. That's where you'll find it. That's where it's been for a long time now. So yeah, thanks to everybody who's watching, who reads and listens. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you've been getting a lot of love in the chat. A lot of people are saying it's the first time they've seen your face. So first time.
Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, but Andrew, I've loved having you here, man. I've probably kept you too long. Let me let you get out of here, man.
Not at all. Listen, good to talk to you, and thanks to you and to all the viewers. And we'll do it again whenever you want.
Come on, man. Thank you for being on here, my guy. Peace.